Okay, so thank you so much. I'll give you all a bit of a background and introduction to this area, okay? Because how many people here know much about law? Some. Who here knows nothing about law? Put your hand, it's okay if you don't. Who knows nothing about law? I need to know if you know nothing about law, so I can. Okay, some of you. Who is too scared to put their hand up? Okay, a lot of you. Okay, so let's go with it. This is my book. It's called Health, AI, and Law. And it's free to read. It's open access with funding from my university, HBKU. So that's the QR code for it. So anybody who's interested in the subject. This book was recently, in the last week, included by something called the National Institute for Health in the US. It's a US government website. On a platform called NIH. So it's now on there too. So it's been read more than 20,000 times, and it came out about 6-7 months ago. So this is the main book in the field now on healthcare, AI, and law. I'm not going to make it too hard, though, for those that aren't non-lawyers. I'll try and make this as open, as accessible as possible. But some of the things I'm talking about are in this book. Okay. So firstly, I want to let you know how a lawyer thinks. Okay. And this is another article I wrote for people who aren't lawyers, so they can understand law a bit better in their field. So how do lawyers deal with problems like AI and its use in society? My focus is on healthcare, but there are other uses too. Well, what lawyers do is they say, okay, AI gives us new problems, new challenges. Let us look at the law we have now, and can we use the law we have now to fix the problem? And what lawyers found was that we can use the law now, but only to a certain point. We actually need new law. So the law we have now is not enough. And so at the same time, you have lots of organizations, governments making policies. So you have the EU, the OECD, the World Health Organization. They make these documents and policies that are about ethics and ethical values and ethical principles. And those help us to fill the gap where there is no law for the time being. And then finally, with all of this new information, we make new law. And so now in the world, we have some new laws in AI. We have the EU's Artificial Intelligence Act, it's called the AI Act. The EU also has something called the Product Liability Directive, the revised Product Liability Directive. And there are lots of small things coming out, particularly in healthcare. Healthcare is an area where we're seeing some developments in law, but mainly there are still so many gaps, and I will explain those gaps to you now. Okay, so if we think about AI in healthcare, how is it used first? So let me give you examples of how it's used in hospitals. So I'm going to skip ahead so you get some examples that you understand easily. So this is VR, okay? So you might have VR goggles like the Apple Vision Pro. So now many companies are developing software on the Apple Vision Pro, for example, to use in surgery. So here is a doctor wearing, you can't see it, but it's on his eyes. He's wearing goggles, and it shows him on the patient's body where the spine is, where the bone is, and where to make an incision. And it guides the doctor using AI. That's one example. Here with the Vision Pro, doctors can also see, before they meet with a patient, their scans through the Vision Pro headset, where they need to do surgery, where blood flow is going. They can look, for example, if they're doing a knee replacement in 3D, what they need to do, and AI guides them in what they need to do. This here is an AI system developed by a hospital in Los Angeles, which is for a counselor, so mental health support, and you can speak with the robot, and the robot speaks back to you, and you can discuss your problems. And this is under the supervision of a doctor. So you're speaking to the robot with the headset on, right? The Vision Pro. But there are other uses too. Let me go back. There are many uses in healthcare, not just this. This is the this is the attractive uses, but there are other uses. So for example, AI can look at your X-ray, it can look at your MRI, and it can see if you have cancer or not. And it can do this better than a doctor in some cases. It can be used to monitor you. If you wear a wristband, okay, so like there are many wristbands now that detect your heartbeat, your blood pressure, and some hospitals are using these to predict if you are going to have a heart attack or a stroke before you even feel sick. So you're wearing it, you feel normal, but the data knows something is wrong, and it sends a warning to your doctor, and it says there is something wrong. You need to bring this patient in now before they have a heart attack, before they have a stroke. So it's advancing a lot. It's even used in CCTV cameras to detect people who have emotional problems in their face, or if they're in prisons, it's used if people are hiding a knife and they might use to self-harm. It's used on phone calls if you are talking to your family and you say something that might be concerning about your health. AI is used in that context to track you. It's used in surgery by robots, so robots doing surgery on you. There are many contexts where AI is now used in healthcare, and companies and hospitals are investing so much money into this. I go to conferences, medical conferences, and there is so much technology they are selling with AI now in this. This is in UAE. They created a metaverse hospital where you can meet with your doctors online. South Korea is developing this type of space too, and some Chinese hospitals. Okay, so this is some of the technology. And so the question is, what does law say about it? Okay, what is the legal questions that we have? And in my book, we looked at many different uses of AI, and we found there are about 6 issues in law that come up that we need to think about. So these are the 6 issues in black. In gray is ethical issues. So let me talk a little bit first about law. So in law, we talk a lot about data. What is the concern about data? Have you heard this before? Like concerns about data, privacy, bias, okay? In healthcare, this is a big issue. So, and actually data means 3 things in law. In law, the first thing we are worried about with data is data bias. So if you are making an AI system with data that is biased, that can be a problem for patients. This happened in America. So they made an AI system. They trained it on patients from one state who have a specific ethnic background. And then they used that on patients in another state that had a very different ethnic background. And the AI system was very bad. It did a bad job because that background has different health outcomes. It's important. So this is a big issue for law, and there is no answer yet. Law has not answered this problem. There is no law to deal with biased data yet. And we are trying to figure out how do we make law in this area. I have some ideas. So I have also produced guidelines for researchers. And my opinion is when you are designing an AI system as a researcher, you must show evidence of which population you will use your AI system on. So if you're going to use your AI system on a population of people with a certain ethnic background, you must prove that the data that you're training your AI system on is also trained on that group before you use it on that group. And we have these guidelines now in Qatar, where we spent 3 years creating them with the Ministry of Health. So that's one idea, but it's not law yet. It's just guidelines. Second issue with data is privacy. If AI is using your data, where is it sending that data? Who is seeing that data? Is it just AI, or is it staying in your country? Is it going to another country? So there is work on this. So in the EU, you have the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, and many countries follow this. In the US, they don't have this. They have something else called HIPAA, which doesn't really protect patients very well. But basically with data privacy, also the law doesn't do a very good job. It doesn't deal with AI specifically. And we are also trying to figure out how do you protect patients when you use AI in their care. So still, we are developing protocols in this space too on data privacy. The third issue of data is security. So what happens if somebody hacks your data or they access your data and they're not supposed to? What if you are sending your data to Apple in the Vision Pro and Apple accesses your data? Or Apple does not secure your data and somebody else accesses your data? And in our book, we found the laws here are really bad. And again, there's so much work needed here. What I'm arguing is we can use blockchain, actually. We can use blockchain with AI to protect patient data better. And maybe this should be written into law, and it's not yet. Okay, so that's 3 issues in law, but 3 of them are data bias, data privacy, data security. Issue number 4 with law is medical liability. Okay, if you go and see a doctor and you have surgery and you are hurt, who is responsible, do you think? Who? You have surgery goes wrong, and you are hurt. Who can you take to court? Who can you sue? The doctor? Who else? The hospital? And if they're using, let's say they're using a device and the device breaks or fails, who can you maybe also take to court and sue? Okay, so let's say doctor, healthcare professional is 1, any type of healthcare professional, hospital is 2. Who makes the equipment? Huh? Manufacturer sometimes. They make equipment like AI manufacturer, and they sell you a product and you use it. Maybe the product fails. So maybe you want to sue them too. Sorry? I thought you had a question. Okay. You're just deep in thought. Okay, so the way medical liability law works, you are correct. If forget AI, just normally, if you get hurt during surgery or something like that, you might take your doctor to court, or you might take the hospital to court and sue them for money. Okay. In some countries, the doctor can go to jail. In some countries, they don't go to prison. It depends on which country you are in. Some countries will first take the doctors to what is called a criminal court, where you can go to jail. Other countries will not do this. They will just take the doctor to what is called a civil court, which means they don't go to jail, but they pay money. So countries like that are the UK, US. The doctor doesn't really go to prison. It's very rare. But in countries like Qatar, you will go to criminal court first. Same in Korea. Korea is criminal court first. So it depends on the country. So with AI, the question is, if AI is the problem and it fails and you get hurt because AI makes a bad recommendation or the robot fails, who is responsible? And the answer is what? What do you think? Who is responsible? Is it if doctor uses AI in your care and AI hurts you, is doctor responsible or AI is responsible? Why? Yeah. Yes, doctor's responsible. You're saying because they're caring for the patient? Okay, you're gonna.
It's the same, because if he uses another tools, the normal tools, he will be the responsible.
Good. So we have something in medicine called the standard of care. This is scientific. Doctors must follow the scientific evidence today in your care, the standard of care. And if they get taken to court, the court will ask other experts, other doctors, did this doctor follow the standard of care? It doesn't matter if the tool fails, did the doctor do the job properly? Say that AI makes a bad recommendation to the doctor, like have surgery. It is still the doctor's responsibility under the law today. But that might change. It might change if what? What do you think? Do you have any idea what might change this in the future, where the doctor is not responsible because of AI? Huh?
The standard of care change. Then
Okay, so if the standard of care is now not set by other doctors, if it's set by AI. So if AI becomes so clever, it says now the standard of care is what AI says, and the hospital says to the doctor, you must follow the AI recommendation. That means that now AI is the standard of care, not doctor. So we might change to this. So in some areas of healthcare, AI is so good now, like radiology, scans for cancer. AI is better than doctors. So the standard of care might change soon so that hospitals require doctors to follow the AI recommendation. In this case, if the AI harms you, the doctor might have what we call in law a defense. So it means you go to court, but you say, I'm just doing my job. The hospital told me to follow AI. And so the court will say, okay, you are just doing your job. You are not responsible. The hospital or the developer of the AI are now responsible. The law has not changed yet, but this is where it might change soon enough. Yes,
But we can also talk about the consent of the patient.
I'll come to that. I'll come to consent next. Yeah. So, but for medical liability, this is how it might change. One of my co-editor for the book, he's called Glenn Cohen. He's at Harvard Law School. He wrote a new article recently where he thinks in the future, maybe the hospital will be responsible because now hospitals are making their own AI. Many of them are. They are paying lots of money to create their own AI that then their doctors must use. We call this enterprise liability. So you don't need to know the technicalities, but for the lawyers, it's called enterprise liability. This is what we call it. Consent. So consent means two things. The word consent on its own with AI simply means, does a patient consent, agree to the use of AI in their care? Another meaning of consent is, does a patient understand everything about their care before making a decision? So they're slightly different meanings, and I will go through them. First, let me ask you a question, another question. Do you think if a doctor is using AI for your care, should the doctor tell you or not? Do they need your consent? They do? Doctor is using ChatGPT or they're using some other AI system, they need to tell you? You think yes? Okay, somebody said no? Oh, who knows? Okay. Why yes? Why? Yeah, go ahead.
Because like my friend is he went to the beautiful doctor and came with the scan the face
Oh,
and the AI give some explanations. He didn't know about the explanation yet. He needs doctors to explain the things about the AI.
okay. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. So the answer in law is complicated. It depends what country you're in. So say if you're in America, there is no law right now that means a doctor has to tell you. The doctor is not required to tell you they are using AI. But if it goes to court, maybe the courts will decide that they do, but they have not yet. So far there is no requirement. But if you go to the EU, people are arguing you have to tell the patient. And now there is a big debate about this, even with lawyers. I go to conferences and we have big disagreements, okay, about this. That's just whether they should use it. The next issue is informed consent. Informed consent is a bit different, which is in medical law, before a patient can agree to surgery or any care, they need to be able to understand the recommendation from the doctor. So if doctor says, we need to make a surgery on your arm, you need to know why. So you should be able to say to the doctor, why? And the doctor says, well, your arm is damaged here. This is a scan. This is my recommendation. This is why you should do surgery. And then you can understand, and then you can agree and offer. This is called informed consent. You make an informed decision. The problem with AI is that AI doesn't properly explain its decision. Even with ChatGPT, it can hallucinate, it can lie, it can make up the reason for its decision. So this is not informed consent. If you are relying on AI says you should have surgery on your arm, and you say why, and AI says this is my reason, but its reason is a lie or it's made up, then you have not got proper informed consent. And this is bad for medical law. So this is actually also still a really big argument with lawyers. Some lawyers say it doesn't matter. Some lawyers says this does matter. I am one of the lawyers that says it really matters. I think this is a fundamental principle in law. You can't break it. So from a patient's perspective, I think this is a big gray area right now. And I'm not confident that AI is giving proper recommendations and they have informed consent. One example, some people are using ChatGPT for their mental health. They shouldn't, but they are. And there are studies showing ChatGPT has made very dangerous recommendations that might actually lead to suicide in patients, not reduce it, because it's giving wrong advice. So it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous if your system is not trained properly. And I think some lawyers are not taking this danger seriously enough. This is something else. I've written many articles, not just the book, many articles. And I think we need to be more cautious on this. You're going to ask about consent. Did I cover it or
Yes.
I did? Okay. Okay, so that's issue number 5 in law. Issue number 6 is intellectual property. Anybody know what IP is, intellectual property? What is this? Okay, this is an area of law if you are a company that protects your secrets. So if you're a company that makes AI algorithm, this is protected information. No one else can see it because why? Why don't you want people to see your algorithm if you make a product?
They are going to copy.
Right, they will copy. You're selling this on the market. If somebody copies, then you lose your competitive advantage. So problem is, if you need to, for medical liability or data privacy reasons, if you need to find out an algorithm and what the algorithm says, a developer is protected. They can say, I'm not going to reveal it because I have intellectual property protections. You can't see it. So now we're starting to have new law, case law, before the courts in the EU. And what the courts in the EU have said is that this is now about balancing rights. So if you, the patient, need to see the AI algorithm, you need to present why. And if you, the developer, don't want to show them, you need to tell us why. And we will decide who has the stronger protection in this situation. So it's case by case, we call it, case by case. This is what's coming out of the EU. So this is a new evolving area of law. Okay. These are the 6 legal issues. And if you see at the very top, I talk about secular and theological ethical perspectives. Under the law are ideals and principles of ethics. Ethics informs law. So we get ideas of law from ethics. So where I am in Qatar, we have a colleague of mine. He's called Muhammad Gali. He's in HBKU. He's an Islamic bioethicist. So this will be of interest to many of you. And he wrote a chapter, for example, on Islamic bioethics in AI. What does Islamic bioethics care about when it comes to data, medical liability, informed consent, intellectual property? What is the relationship between the patient and God, patient and doctor, patient? So we need to think about these issues in different societies. We also have a chapter on Christian ethics too, and then secular ethics. But you can look at different religions and different countries and how that might change the law in each country. So we cover that a little bit in the book too. So for example, when a law is made in Qatar, I advise the Ministry of Health. One of the first things they do, they go to the Islamic bioethics expert, like my colleague, and say, what does Islam say about these issues before we make a law? So it's very interesting. You have that less in the UK. It's more secular ethics that would play into that. Okay. Oh, this is a liability thing. Okay, I will just say a couple of things on data. I've also analyzed UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar a lot. So one of the big questions with data too is, I was talking about data privacy, is when you can send your data to another country, AI is in the cloud. So that means AI servers are in many countries. And the way this is dealt with is a little bit complicated. So some countries are very strict. So UAE are very strict. So Dubai, Abu Dhabi, they're very strict about sending data from their country to another country. So AI developers find it difficult to sell AI systems in UAE because they must keep their data inside the UAE. They can't send it to a cloud in America. It must stay there. Countries like Saudi Arabia, what they say is you can send your data to another country if that country has the same law as we do, same legal protection. So, for example, Saudi's data protection law is very similar to the EU's data protection law. So Saudi is comfortable with AI companies sending data from Saudi Arabia to the EU because it's the same sort of protection. Countries like Qatar haven't said yet. So companies don't know what to do. So this is important for companies. If you are a company, you make a product, you need to know the law. If you don't know the law, you don't know if you can sell your product on the market, and this can affect your business. So many companies come to me and they say, what is the law in Qatar? And I say, there is no law. And this is why you're finding it difficult to sell your product in Qatar. Many hospitals will not buy your product. They will buy it from a US company who's got FDA approval. So this is a bit of a legal complication, but nonetheless covered in that way. So around the world, I showed you those 6 legal issues. I showed you data, 3 issues of data, medical liability, consent, intellectual property, okay? What are countries around the world doing about those? The answer is very little. And so my argument is we need to start fixing those issues. What most countries are doing now is they are making what are called medical device regulations cover AI. So medical device regulations, if you sell a product in any country, a medical product, you have to get approval from a regulator to sell it. And they are adding some rules if your product has AI. But those rules do not cover the issues I talked about. They don't cover consent. They don't cover data, really. They don't cover medical liability. So I'm arguing the law needs to change to cover these issues. Okay. So that's a big area of research now that we are doing. This is my research project at HBKU in Qatar. We spent 3 years. These guidelines are now online. We developed these with the Ministry of Health. And these are requirements for healthcare researchers to follow when they are developing AI systems. So these are certain things they need to look at when they are developing their data, things they should show a regulator to prove that they are making safe systems for patients. So this is some of the work I'm trying to do to help. Saudi Arabia has medical device regulations, which are pretty good. And the UAE also has some policies which are pretty good too. I'm not going to go into the details, it's a bit technical, but there is some interesting work being done in the Middle East. But my book covers countries from all around the world. Happy to talk about those and questions. Some people ask, does ChatGPT change things? And the answer is no. Legally, ChatGPT is not introducing new legal issues in medicine. It's the same issues. It's just they play out a bit differently. Like ChatGPT raises the stakes with informed consent a bit more, liability more, but it's the same legal issues we are finding so far. So I'm also part of the World Health Organization have a group and that I'm a part of, which we are now developing regulations for countries to follow around the world. So now we are taking all of these issues I'm talking about and trying to think about what can countries do around the world that's uniform and the same to have better standards. So this is where a lot of work is going into now. Okay, I think, stop there to keep things brief. I'm on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me on there. And I share all of these updates and research all the time. There's always many things coming out soon, new articles on these issues. So they might be useful to your research. So I've shaved some time off, so we claw back a bit of time, but happy to answer some more questions. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah.
So we thank you deeply. And I don't know if there are other questions from my part. For example, I would like to point out that when in medicine you take different or, for example, risky procedure, and they ask to the patient if they understand the risk And of course, you have not a medical degree and your understanding can be limited.
Yeah.
But of course, that shield the professional also in their job. I don't know if something like this can be happen. And maybe a second question, if you, of course, I think, but if you see big differences when the healthcare is mainly public or mainly private.
Okay, so thank you. First question. So the first question was on the
informed consent.
yeah. So the rule is doctors have to explain things to patients in a way that they can understand. So it shouldn't be overly technical anyway. But even so, can you even if AI gives you a simple explanation to the doctor, if that explanation is wrong, you still don't have informed consent. Informed consent has to be based on true information. So that's the concern. So the overly technical information issue anyway, you wouldn't explain something too technical. I hope that answers that question. And public and private, not really in terms of the law. The law is the same. So the law in a country doesn't distinguish whether it's public or private. It's the same medical laws. It might just matter more. Public hospitals are more likely to be ones making AI systems now. So if they are making them, then they are more likely to be liable if something goes wrong, because private hospitals are more likely purchasing a system externally. That's the only real big distinction. Yeah. Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
Based on your experience with the Gulf states,
Ah.
how do you think the country is more better than with the change? The you know, with the AI, the changes make quick and fast
Mm.
with the regulation. Based on your experience now with Qatar and UAE and Saudi.
So surprisingly, so from my book, right, we looked at countries all around the world. So I did a few chapters, but the one I also did was on those three GCC countries. And surprisingly, I found that actually, where is it? These are the issues we're concerned about: research and development of AI, approving a medical device to market, and then the use of the AI system in clinical practice. And now in Qatar, with our guidelines, we cover number 1. Saudi covers number 2 very well, and UAE covers number 3. So I've just written an article which is coming out soon in a journal called NPJ Digital Medicine. It's a Nature journal, where I'm arguing that actually Qatar, UAE, and Saudi give us a model together of how we can regulate the whole life cycle of AI in healthcare. So surprisingly, they're actually pretty much ahead of the curve. So for example, Saudi in their medical device regulations did things before the FDA in the US, which the FDA then followed. So not bad. The problem is what happens in the end, implementation on the ground. There is very little data, but there is some good work being done, I think.
Thank you. Thanks for it. Interesting talk. I think, of course, we would like to do this overall guidance. I found it really interesting that you said there is not much of a difference in how large language models are introduced with like Chinese material. I was surprised by this comment because a lot of the kind of AI used for diagnostics are actually using quite different AI. Whereas with large language models, now you expect practitioners or observe practitioners in medicine to negotiate meaning. Because what would be the best action to take in a particular situation? In this kind of context, it becomes quite difficult when it is a practitioner's idea, when it was actually introduced by AI, and then they suddenly kind of assumed that this was their idea, and then they took the responsibility to make a particular decision. So I was wondering how this kind of conversation-driven insights from large language models might have an impact on accountability discussions in law.
So I think it doesn't change things, because in the sense that it's still a question of medical liability, right? It's not a separate legal domain. So we're still talking about, are you responsible in if something goes wrong in the way that you deal with the AI? You're right, at a operational level in the hospital, it changes a lot. How do you do your task? But it still falls under the umbrella of medical liability. That's what I mean. The domain of law, but you're completely right. It's going to, so there are some, for example, there are hospitals now in Singapore, which have internal AI committees that will hear these cases and deal with them. And now we're seeing more hospitals move towards this AI committee model internally, and they're figuring it out, but there's no uniform approach yet. It's still being determined. But there are some, I mean, if you're really interested, there are documents I could share with you on the reason the Singapore model, which is quite interesting. But yeah. Is somebody going to have a question there, or were you just sharing a pen? You were just passing a pen. Okay. Sorry, I'm hyper aware of everything that's going on for me. I can see lots of things. So I'm like this with my students. Somebody lifts their hand, question. No, they're just doing their hair. You know. Yeah. Okay. No more questions.
Thank you, Professor, for your
All
presentation.
right, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.